Okay, good. So we'll kick off tonight. So you're all very welcome back to week 4 of the course. I hope you can hear me. Oliver, can you hear me okay? Yeah, great. Apologies for not being here last week. I was away in the UK on kind of a retreat / meeting, and that's why Prasannadeva had to cover himself last week. And Prasannadeva is away this week on a solitary retreat, so he isn't able to make it tonight, but he'll be back next week. So the next 2 weeks of the course, he and I will both be doing that together. And just to say that you will have to bear with me a little bit tonight. Unfortunately, I came back with a dose of the dreaded plague, so I have COVID. It's not transmittable over microphones, so you needn't worry. And it's not too bad. I just feel a bit tired and a bit worn out and a bit chesty. But I'm already better, much better since yesterday. But while the groups are on, I'm going to go and lie down in my bed instead of going into the groups. And hopefully I'll be able to carry tonight. If Prasannadeva was back, I'd let him lead the night again. But quite happy to be here now. And thanks. I will, Liz, look after myself. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at, let's have an overview of what we're going to do tonight, and then I'll remind you of the home practice as well. So tonight, what we're doing tonight, a review of last week and the home practice. We'll go into groups then and talk about how our home practice went on during the week, or how we got on with practice during the week, or anything that struck us from the material during the week. We'll have a tea break. Leg stretch, whatever you want to call it. And then tonight's theme is watching the gap. So it's looking at the outer rim of the wheel of life, and looking at, conditionality, we'll see, and how we can particularly pay attention to the gap that leads from the wheel to the spiral, from the reactive mind to the creative mind. And then we'll, as usual, towards the end, do home practice and groups. Yeah. So, and I don't have in there, but we'll also do some meditation as well now in a few minutes. So actually we'll do the meditation now, because let's get set up, and we'll sit for about 15 or 20 minutes or so here, and then we'll go into groups. And so just taking the time then to make sure we're comfortable and sitting reasonably upright. So the main thing in meditation, you can sit in technical cross-legged position and various positions, but they're all about just getting comfortable. So trying to sit as comfortably as you can, and in such a way that you don't have to move very much. If you have to move, you can move very slowly. So when you're ready, closing your eyes for the meditation. We're going to do a body scan, but we're going to bring out some of the principles that we'll be looking at later as well in this body scan. So beginning by just having a sense of the room around you, the sounds you can hear. You might have a sense of the people in the building with you, traffic outside. And having a general awareness of your body then, the shape of your body, how you're sitting. The way your arms and legs are shaped or bent, your head, your chest, a general sense of all your body. And then moving your awareness into your feet and your toes and feeling whatever you can feel here. And it's good if we can actually feel sensations. For example, the contact of your feet with the floor, or the temperature of your feet, rather than an idea of feet. So you want to be as much as you can down in your feet, or have your awareness down there, which is entirely possible to do with practice. Can you notice, for example, the fabric of your socks or tights or your shoes? The contact between your skin and the clothing or the ground. How many of your toes can you individually feel? Can you individually be aware of? You likely won't be able to feel them all. Just being a bit playful and seeing how many you can feel. An actual sensation rather than ideas about them. Moving up into your ankles and your shins and your calf muscles. What can you feel here? And if you can't feel much, it's better to wait and see what emerges with patience, rather than just be in an idea about it or thinking about your shins and calf muscles and ankles. Just being really patient and seeing what you can feel here. What emerges. Again, perhaps noticing the contact of your skin with your clothing, or the temperature that you feel your shins are at, your calf muscles. Becoming aware of your knees, the fabric of clothing over the front of your knees, perhaps, the sides of your knees. And the sensitive area at the back of our knees, perhaps noticing any energy or sensitivity here. Space behind the knees. Noticing our thighs, allowing these powerful muscles to just be at ease, allowing them to be supported by the chair, the cushions, the ground, whatever we're sitting on. Noticing the contact with the chair, the cushions, the ground. Becoming aware of our sitting bones and our hips and pelvis. Noticing how the sitting bones support our weight, support the body being upright. We can let go into the support of the contact between the sitting bones and the chair. Seeing how much we can feel of the bowl of the pelvis and the hips. Opening to sensations in the groin, in the buttocks. Moving into our back, noticing our lower back, the backs of our kidneys, the muscles around the lower spine. Moving up along the muscles either side of the spine, up between the shoulder blades. Almost imagine a zip being opened as the muscles open and relax all the way up along the spine. Maybe we feel a release of energy as muscles open and be at ease. Becoming aware of the muscles around the shoulder blades. Maybe here we can feel the contact again with our clothing or with the chair, the back of the chair, if we're sitting in that kind of chair. Moving our attention into our shoulders then, opening to all the various sensations that we can feel in the shoulders. Any ripples of texture or sensation, painful, pleasant, in the shoulders. Any tightness. And again, maybe feeling the contact of your clothing over your shoulders. Becoming aware of your arms, your upper arms. What sensations can we feel here, if any? Waiting patiently if you can't feel much right now. And the shape and bend of our elbows. Our forearms. Our wrists. Becoming aware then of all the sensations in the hands, the backs of the hands. The palms of the hands. Noticing all the textures of energy and sensation in the palms of the hands, if you can. And then the fingers and thumbs, very sensitive parts of the body. What can you feel in your fingers and thumbs and hands? Maybe it's the contact with whatever your hand is pressed against or lying on. Then moving our attention into our throat and neck and jaw. What can we feel in the neck and the throat, the jaw? Becoming aware of your face, your lips, your cheeks, your nose. Maybe you can feel the air on your face from the room, the temperature. Or maybe you just feel the heat of your face. Becoming aware too of your eyes, your eyelids, your eyebrows, your forehead. The sides of your head and your ears. How vividly can you feel your ears? And then your scalp. And then moving down into the stomach and abdomen area, just feeling this area, just letting it be. the sides of the body from the hips to the armpits. And the chest. Rise and fall of the rib cage as we breathe in, as we breathe out. And now we're going to go back through the body again, more briefly this time, but just paying attention to what we might call the feeling tone. Is our experience of the different parts of our body pleasant, painful, or somewhat neutral? So again, becoming aware of the feet, the toes. Can you say that this feels pleasant or painful? Or is it somewhat neutral? Being open to it. Having this experience of feet. Your legs up to your, and including your knees. How do these feel? Is it pleasant? Sensations we can feel? Is it enjoyable? Is it painful? Or is it just a bit meh, or not much happening? Your thigh muscles as well then, and your whole legs. And if the experience is pleasant, just experiencing that without grasping after it or trying to milk it for anything. If it's unpleasant, just allowing that in without pushing it away. And if it's neutral, just staying with that experience and allowing whatever wants to emerge. And again, the hips and the pelvis and the groin and the buttocks. As we open to this area, how does it feel? Staying as much as we can with the simple experience of contact with the chair and so on, or energy or feelings in this area. Just seeing, is that pleasant or painful to be with that? Or the enjoyable? And watching out for getting sucked into craving or aversion. And just staying with the experience as it is. And now our back and our spine and our shoulder blades and shoulders. Is this pleasant? Is it painful as we tune into it? You're tuning into the experience you're already having. This experience of your back, of your shoulders. And if you don't feel much, that's okay too. And then your arms and your hands. Is this pleasant or painful? Wherever experience is most vivid here. Or being aware of the whole of your arms and hands as well, if you want. And now your face. Be aware of your face and all the sensations in your face, sensitivity of your lips and cheeks, your eyelids, your forehead. And staying with this simple awareness of the sensations and the simple awareness of if it's pleasant or if it's painful. I'm not trying to do any more than that. I'm not trying to push anything away or pull anything towards you. And your whole head, your ears, your scalp as well. Then coming down into your stomach and abdomen area. As you tune into the actual sensations here rather than ideas of them. Are they pleasant? Are they pleasantly tinged? Are they painfully tinged? Are they neutral? And finally, in your chest and heart area. What can we feel in our heart, in our chest? The breath, the body breathing rather, if that's what's vivid for you. And is this pleasant or painful? And just noting any learning then that we've made in this practice, anything you want to remember or bring into the groups. And in your own time then bringing the practice to a close, wiggling fingers and toes and coming out of posture. Okay, great. So I'll come back to after the tea break why I was emphasizing contact and feeling tone so much there. But just to give you a recap of what we did last week, if this isn't blasting you too much now after that, and you can talk in the groups as well about how that was if you want. So the home practice from last week, yeah. So I was encouraging you to read to page, or Prasannadeva was rather last week, read to page 25 of the book. If you've already learned with us, meditate every day and notice the reactive mind and the creative mind at work. Notice the reactive mind and creative mind at work in your life in general, actually, as well. And it's the same homework as the previous week. What kind of worlds do you find yourself in? And what can you do about these? You know, what is the Buddha showing us? And actually, I didn't recap what we did last week. Sorry, let me just share a different image then. So what we were talking about last week was the three other wheels of the wheel of life. So we had the Ashura realm, the Titan realm, which is the realm here where they have all the axes and swords, and it's very competitive and so on. And this is the realm of intense competitiveness and envy and ego assertion at the expense of other people, and great drive to make things happen. But not always in a skillful way. And then on top here we have the realm of the gods. So the gods, live a life of ease and have everything they want. Traditionally, it's said that, anything you want just miraculously appears to you, ready for you to use. But I think of it more in terms of, like, in this life, people who have everything they want, money, property, they've never had to be hungry at all. They've never had to want for anything they want, they can immediately get straight away. And then the third realm that Prasannadeva talked about last week is the human realm, where pain and pleasure are finely woven, and an equal amount of each. We're not overwhelmed by the pain like beings in the hell realms are, and we're not made forgetful by pleasure. That's what happens when we experience a lot of pleasure. We get forgetful about the true meaning of things, and we forget that pleasures will end. So these are the three realms. And then in terms of the Buddha that appears, so in the Titan realm, the Ashura realm, the Buddha appears with the sword of wisdom. And in a way, that's about meeting that kind of energy with a similar energy, I think. And the sword of wisdom cuts through, what could you call it? It cuts through mundane or impure ambition and transforms it into pure ambition and positive ambition. So we do need to be ambitious in the spiritual life. We really, like, one ambition might be to make sure you meditate every day, and you're going to meditate every day for the next 10 years, or the rest of your life. That would be a really positive ambition. So there's nothing wrong with ambition in and of itself. An ambition for Buddhists is to be enlightened. But the Buddha appears with a sword of wisdom, which is the language that the Titans can understand, and shows them the true sword is the sword that cuts through the delusions of the world. And in the gold realm, so if you, I think in the West, quite a few of us live in the gold realm, where we never really have to worry about anything until it's taken away from us. And you see what happens in the Ukraine, and you think, God, that something like that, you could never imagine that happening here. It would never be taken, like, your whole life taken away from you like that. But anyways, in the gold realm, the Buddha appears playing the lute. A lute is a kind of an old-fashioned guitar, but he plays the lute of impermanence, reminding you that you can't take things for granted. All things end. Yeah, all things end. And in the human realm, then, the Buddha appears as a monk. So you can actually see the monk there in this one. And in the human realm, which is in a way probably the best realm for practicing, it's the most creative realm, you could say, because you can see there's the artist painting, there's the people raising a family and people going to work. It's the most creative realm, you could say, and it's the realm where then you're reminded to turn your energies towards living a spiritually meaningful life. Yeah, you don't have to necessarily become a monk, but living a spiritually meaningful life. So they're the three realms that we looked at last week. And then to go back again to the homework, then it was and so in the groups now you could talk about, well, what realms of any of those six do you tend to go into in your day? And also, what is the Buddha's message that can, like, how is that relevant for you? So if you lead a very easy, relaxed, godlike existence, what might the Buddha playing impermanence for you mean? Or if you're very competitive and ambitious, what might the sword of wisdom mean for you? And the sword of wisdom there might mean putting that energy into the Dharma as opposed to conquering other people. Okay, I've probably said enough because I'm just repeating last week. So why don't we go into the groups now? And Oscar is going to put you in groups now. We're going to have to slightly reshuffle the groups a bit. Just one or two of you came late there. Unfortunately, I'm slightly tired from COVID, so I'm going to skip out of a group. And one or two of our leaders are missing, so there'll be slightly different groups this week. So we'll go into those groups for, let's go into them for 12 minutes. And Oscar, if you want to set those up whenever you're ready, you can put me in a group and I just won't join if that's easier for you as well. Yeah. Great. So I think everyone is back. So let's see if there's any things that came out of the groups. So feel free to put any comments or questions in the chat, or if anyone wants to unmute themselves and bring up any points from the week, you'd be welcome to speak up, or if any of the group leaders want to report back on any interesting questions or comments from the groups, that would be great. So give us a few minutes and then we'll go into a tea break.
Hi, Vajrashura. In our group there, I was cut off in the mid of the end of the sentence, but just to say that the hell realm and the god and the Titans realm were there for the three of us, and maybe the Metta Bhavana practice would be a good solution for that. What would you say? Would you recommend? Is there any guided meditation they could access?
Yeah, and why did you think that the Metta Bhavana would be good? That's really interesting.
In my path with the study group, with Mitra study group, when I come up with those issues with people, Atula Mitra says go for the Metta Bhavana, and it's been helping a lot because it's the first stage is self-love, and it kind of makes me a bit stronger to face what is uncomfortable in the hell realm or the Titans realm. Yeah.
No, that's very good. So if people don't know, the Metta Bhavana, the Metta practice is doing loving kindness for yourself and for other people, and you even do it. You do it for people. You start with yourself. You do it for other people, starting with a friend, and then you work up to an enemy, and then you do it for all beings. And it's very hard to love. Well, it's the exact opposite of hatred, basically. And as we looked at 2 weeks ago, I think it was, a large part of hell is hatred, basically. So Metta Bhavana and love is a very good counterpart to hell, to hatred, rather, sorry. And it's a very good antidote. And also in terms of the Titan realm, I think, again, Metta can be very good here in terms of, Metta brings you into human relationship again with other people. Loving kindness, empathy brings you into connection with other people. And so you're less likely to stomp all over them getting to what you want, The other thing that can help us with hell and Ashura, Titan realms, like you call it, is the Ashura realm is the technical term, but Titan realm. Ashura is an old Sanskrit word, I think. Well, we'll come back to it after the tea break, but staying with what's actually happening rather than getting lost in stories about what's happening. So particularly staying with uncomfortable situations and not getting into strong aversion as a result. So aversion is trying to push something away. And often when you stay with painful experiences, they tend to get better. But if you push them away, it can usually make them worse, because it's like pushing a beach ball underwater. The more you press it under the water, the stronger it's going to bounce back up and probably hit you in the face as well. So it's that thing that we're doing to the body scan, is trying to stay with our actual experience rather than our story about the experience, and not get lost in aversion and craving. But yeah, it's difficult. I also think the other thing with hell is just, the Sangha is really important. The spiritual community is really important. Having people to talk to about things is really important. And friendship is a central part of the Buddhist life as well. Anyways, thank you, Carol. I'm sure there's loads more that could be said. Yeah. Anyone else? I won't spotlight you unless you're on the team. Any other comments?
No, I would like to agree with Carol. The Metta Bhavana is where it's at. As Bob Dylan would have said, or somebody would have said anyway, back in the 60s.
Love is all you need.
Well, that was John Lennon, but yeah. And I was talking about that last night. I did tell the ladies in the group I was in that there are some guided meditations on the Buddhist website. Is that true? I haven't been telling you.
Yeah, I've been sending them out in the email every week as well. So they're down towards the bottom of the email. You can see all the guided meditations there as well. And also there's a very good website called Free Buddhist Audio.
Yeah.
I'll send it out tonight as well. So I need to send a couple of things out tonight. And I'll send out some lead metta there as well. Lead loving kindness practice from there as well. So yeah, thank you, Tom. Have you found that as well yourself in your practice?
Yeah, I have. I find Metta Bhavana is, as I said, it's where it's at. It's and I think the world needs it at the moment. The Ukraine certainly needs it, and that's really all I can say about that. As I was saying when we were doing the check-ins earlier, I'm inclined to get a bit upset, and some people in the groups have been saying that about what's going on in Ukraine. And Metta Bhavana is probably one way we can help. We can probably send some loving kindness over there. They could certainly do it, and certainly take a weight off. It's not going to take a weight off our shoulders, but it's being proactive, if you like. What else can we do? Yeah, that's all I'd say.
And I do believe it has an effect. You know, I really do believe that it has an effect. It's not just the effect that it has on our own minds. I do believe that it has an effect on other people as well and on situations. I've had too many experiences on a very much smaller level than Ukraine, obviously, but with interpersonal conflict where it just feels really insolvable. And you just do metta and something gives and something unlocks and something unfolds. And hell can become a much more pleasant state then, you know? And it can be quite quick how quickly love can break through those situations. And it also, like, we have the verses from the Dhammapada, which is one of the very old texts of Buddhism, the opening verses. I'll share those as well. But quoting from memory, it says that not by hatred are hatreds ever pacified here in the world. They are pacified only by love. This is the eternal law. So not by hatred are hatreds ever pacified here in the world. They are pacified only by love. This is the eternal law. And you can try this out yourself on a smaller scale than, you know, international conflicts, but you can try this out yourself by asking yourself, when has more hatred ever helped my conflicts with people? You know, and they only ever really resolve where you start to treat the other person as a human being again, when you move from the reactive into the creative mind. And the reactive mind and the creative mind aren't just how you think, they're how we do our emotional states as well. You know, emotions are things we do, we actively do, they're motion. So metta, loving kindness, is a movement towards a person. And it's only that is going to resolve, it's only that's going to put out the fires of hell, you could say, you know. Yeah, Colin, let's add you here.
Yes, so one comment about target setting. You said something about 10 years of meditation every day.
That's easy. That's a low target. You should be really the rest of your life. But anyway,
yeah, I thought 100 would be better. But no, especially, so for me, if I tend to miss my target, then I might lose a lot of motivation. So we were discussing a bit about maybe setting targets that are kind of very reachable and slowly increasing them to keep motivated.
Yeah, you're not going to solve the Ukraine crisis tomorrow, I'm afraid, if that's your goal, you know what I mean? But you can imbue all your actions as much as you can with love, and who knows what effect that will have in wider circles, you know. Good. So realistic targets. You know, when we set resolutions, we often set resolutions at the end of a retreat. Say, I tell people, keep it simple, very simple. You know, I'm going to meditate every day and keep it really specific. Really specific. If you think if you have an intention like I'm going to become a better person, that's a bit vague. What you're better off doing is, I'm going to do mindfulness of breathing and the metta bhavana, one of those every day this week. Something like that. Be very, very specific in your goal setting, you know. And one of the big things which we haven't been able to do with COVID, but I'd really encourage you to get on retreat once we start running retreats again, because there you're doing a few hours a day, and then you come back in 20 minutes is very little actually. But I'll finish with a story. So there's this story of this meditation teacher who's in death row in America teaching meditation to these prisoners. And, you know, some of them really like it and some of them don't. And these are like guys on death row. They have 23.5 hours in their cell, and they got half an hour around the exercise yard. And anyway, so he's chatting to them about why some of them have taken it up and why some of them haven't. And one guy says, yeah, I really like meditation. I really, really like it, but it's not for me. And the meditation teacher asks him why. And he says, I just don't have the time. So the lesson, and this was one that struck me very strongly when I first started to meditate, is that you are master of your destiny. You decide what you do with your time, not anyone else. Yeah. And so it's up to you to decide how you want to spend your time. And you know, so if you want to really get 20 minutes of meditation going a day, that's your choice. Nobody can stop you from doing it. And if you don't do it, I'm not saying this to be hard on yourself or anything like that. Remember that we really emphasize self-metta. But don't let anyone else tell you how you should spend your day. If you feel that that's what you want to do and need to do, then you do it, you know. Okay, so anyways, so just before the tea break, just to remind you again that we've got 2 more weeks after this week on the course, and it is on a donation basis. So if you can, it would be great if you could give a donation to the Buddhist Centre, and many of you already have, so thank you very much for that. Oscar, could you just share the link there in case anyone wants to do it in the chat or in the tea break? And yeah, we're entirely dependent at this stage on donations from people like yourselves. So in order to keep it going and help more people come across the Dharma and learn about the creative mind that loves, really encourage you to give if you can. And if you can't, that's completely fine. Okay, so let's take a tea break now for 10 minutes, and let's be back ready to go at 12 minutes past 8. Okay, and if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to put them into the chat. Great, so one of the things that I'll be sharing with you this week, I'm not sure if Prasannadeva sent it out last week. Carol on the team here did some paintings of the Wheel of Life as well. Carol, do you want to say something about
that? We were studying it at this study group, and I got 2 wheels that are more traditional. So the drawing was not my creation. I mixed 2 different wheels, but the painting is mine. So the colors I'm very proud of. And yeah, that's it. It's been a great learning process. Thanks.
So you might want to draw your own, and if you want to use them, you can give a donation to the centre. Carol, is that what you were saying as the artist?
Yeah, so all the drawings I make, they're Buddhist that I send to a folder. It's my way of donating. I got a job now, but I didn't have a job before. So that was how I could contribute with the Sangha. And I'm sure we all can find ways to contribute.
Right, thanks, Carol. Okay, great. Let me just check if everyone's back. We have one more person now. Okay, I think everyone's back. So, okay, so let's keep going. So next, I want to talk about the outer wheel. So I'll show you this again. I'm using the more traditional one we've been using here before. I know last week we used the Carol's one. It's good to have different ones. So this week I want to talk about the outer circle. So it's quite complex, and we're only going to be able to touch into it briefly. But I wanted to start with the Buddha. So the Buddha's up here. And on the night of his enlightenment, there's a story that after he gained enlightenment, he was pondering deeply the nature of enlightenment and felt that it was beyond words. And it would be very, very difficult to communicate to people what the nature of enlightenment was. And in fact, at one point he wondered, would there be any point in him trying to communicate to anyone? Would anyone understand the message, it being so subtle? And it's said that in the traditional story that as he was sitting there under the Bodhi tree, a great god appeared to him. In Buddhism, you have the gods, like in the god realm, who are just quite refined beings. They're not God, capital G, in the Western sense. And one of these gods appeared to him and made an offering to him and said, there are beings with little dust in their eyes who will see if you teach them. And so the Buddha had this vision of humanity like a bed of lotuses, a beautiful bed of lotuses growing up out of the earth, out of the mud. And some of them were just barely starting to grow, and some of them were almost at the point where they were fully open. And he saw that there were people who would understand this teaching of his, and that he could help people unfold further by teaching the Dharma. So enlightenment, it's really hard to communicate. And words point the way. Words can only point the way. In a way, as soon as we say anything about the nature of reality, about the Buddha's vision, we falsified it, because as soon as they say something as this, then you've kind of narrowed it down to what it isn't. But words are really important. And we do need words to go beyond words. One Buddhist poet said, from I can't remember what century he was in, over 1,000 years ago anyway, he said, we use words to go beyond words into the wordless. So we use words to go beyond words into the wordless. And so the Buddha used these particular words of conditionality, which were this being, that becomes. Oscar, could you type this into the chat, because I forgot to put it on the this being, that becomes, from the arising of this, that arises. This not being, that does not become. From the ceasing of this, that ceases. So you might not have become enlightened upon hearing that. This being, that becomes. From the arising of this, that arises. This not being, that does not become. From the ceasing of this, that ceases. How are you doing, Oscar? Good. It's coming now. So this is called conditionality. And what the Buddha was saying here, now I find this a very opaque statement, and it's just one translation of many ways it can be put. So I'll let you just have a look at it there. Sorry, now I should have this in my slideshow, but I don't, I'm afraid. I'll take a note for next time. So what he meant by this was that conditions give rise to things happening. Everything that happens to us, every place we find ourselves in, every state of mind that we find ourselves inhabiting has arisen in dependence upon conditions. Okay, so there's a set of conditions that have led to you being here with this body, with this mind, with this kind of general state of being, with this world around you. And there's innumerable, in fact, almost infinite conditions that have led you to being here tonight. Yeah. So if you haven't eaten your dinner earlier on and you're tired, you didn't sleep well, you might be having an impatient experience of this course, and you want Vajrashura just to get on with it, and so you can go and eat your dinner, you know? So that's how those conditions have led you to having this experience where Vajrashura is just very long-winded, you know, if I may refer to myself in the third person. Or maybe you've been meditating every day and you feel very spacious and you've been really inhabiting the creative mind. And everything that Vajrashura said is incredibly profound, you know? And hopefully it's towards that end of things. And so there's two of you there having that experience. One of you is having the experience of Vajrashura is really long-winded, and the other one's having the experience of Vajrashura being really profound. Both of those are true in a way for you, you know? So that's your experience, that's your world that you have created. And that has arisen in dependence upon conditions. And maybe Vajrashura is really long-winded in the first half, and then you got a bite to eat, and now he's really profound. Do you know what I mean? So everything arises in dependence upon conditions, yeah? And nothing, in a way it's very simple, but the Buddha, one of the Buddha's followers, Ananda, who was his cousin, who was kind of like his PA for most of the Buddha's life, once said to him, God, this is really simple, isn't it? It's so easy to understand. And the Buddha said, no, it's really not easy to understand. It's because we don't really understand this fully and the implications of it that we suffer. This is what causes all our suffering, that we don't realize just how much our experience arises and passes away in dependence upon conditions. So one implication, so I'm going to spend a bit of time unpacking this now, yeah, and then we'll come back to the Wheel of Life again. And we'll see why it's relevant to the Wheel of Life. So one of the implications of this is, and this isn't necessarily science because it includes the mind, it includes the heart and so on, although you could argue that's in science too. But one of the implications is that if any of those conditions were different, like if you had eaten, you'd have a different experience. So all those conditions, like everything that influences us, like our body and our levels of hunger, change all the time. You know, so nothing is ever fixed, nothing is ever solid, everything is ever changing, ever flowing. Yeah, so the you that you are now is not the same person you were yesterday. You know, the glass that I have here beside me doesn't have the same water in it as yesterday, and is a different glass in a way. Maybe there's a bit more dust in it or so on. Maybe your nails have gotten a bit longer since yesterday as they grow. Maybe your COVID infection has come on more strongly or recovered a bit more since yesterday. Thankfully, it has recovered a little bit since yesterday. And so lots of conditions go into having a particular experience. And what the Buddha is saying that is when the conditions are there, things will happen. When those conditions are no longer there, things will stop. And we have to think of conditions in terms of like a good example is like a seed, putting a seed in a pot. Yeah, if any of you are gardeners or horticulturalists. So when you put a seed in the pot, you also water the soil, don't you? And you make sure that the soil is fertile, that as the seed germinates, it has minerals there to take in and to use to grow. And the temperature is right. And, you know, some people argue that a necessary condition is to talk to the plant. And certainly temperature has an effect, or moving the plant around has an effect. So there's a whole lot of conditions that lead to the plant becoming a tree, for example, you know, and out of the humble acorn comes the mighty oak, you know. So all those conditions are there that lead to this thing unfolding. And there's, yeah, so that's what the Buddha is saying. So when we meditate, we're putting in place the conditions for that to flower into a creative mind later in the day or in that meditation. Yeah. When we don't get enough sleep, you're planting this, you're putting the conditions in place for grumpiness later, you know? So our mental states, our states of mind don't just happen to us willy-nilly or by accident. They are the fruit of many, many conditions. Yeah. Some of those conditions we can have influence on, some of them we can't. So it's not about apportioning blame or anything like that. Yeah. And it's not just that things come into being, it's also that things end, you know? So there's endings, there's beginnings, there's both of them. So, you know, when we are experiencing anxiety about Ukraine, for example, or we feel irritable with people at work, we go and do the metabhavana, as we've talked about before the break. And then that gives rise to a more creative state of mind where we can actually just take in the bigger perspective a bit more. Yeah. So things don't just happen by accident. And nothing is ever fixed. Our states of mind are never fixed. And there's nothing in the world that doesn't arise in dependence upon conditions. And so there's nothing in the world that doesn't have any permanence to it, because conditions, the infinite number of conditions that go into everything, if one of those changes, the experience of that thing changes then. Yeah. Now I'll bring this more back to why this is important for spiritual growth in a moment, but I'd like to put it out there. Is there anything that you can think of that doesn't arise in dependence upon a particular set of conditions? Or is there anything out there that is fixed and permanent? And if you can prove the Buddhist tradition wrong, you're welcome to put that in the chat. How we might even spotlight you if you can prove the Buddhist tradition wrong. But okay, so it's a really interesting reflection, this. Awareness, well, when you sleep, you're unaware generally, or when you're unconscious. So awareness is from Ray there. Yeah, so there's definitely times when I'm unaware. Consciousness is an interesting one, but consciousness itself is ever changing. So I definitely don't have the same consciousness that I have now that I had 3 days ago before I got sick. You know what I mean? And I'll have a different kind of consciousness. It's not saying that there isn't continuity, but there's nothing fixed about that continuity. Colin has joked about Boltzmann's constant, or you could say pi, but you never know. Maybe after a big bang and a big collapse and another universe arises, that could be a different set of physical conditions. Who knows? And for all we know, in a different region of space, Boltzmann's constant might be different. Just to remind you, I'm a theoretical physicist by background. Change is the only constant. Yeah, I mean, like change is just like more a description of the process. So in a way, there's only change. There's only change, you know? The only constant in life. And even how things changes. But nothing ever stays the same. And the Buddha is saying is that it's because we don't really see this deeply enough that we cause ourselves suffering. Okay, so I want to do a short reflection. So let's close our eyes and sit comfortably for a moment or two. So I want you now to think back to the person you were 5 years ago. Yeah. And you could remember maybe a particular incident that happened to you, not an unpleasant one necessarily, just, you know, how you were back then, what your life looked like, the kind of person you were back in 2017. Just get a feeling for the person you were back then. Or you can go to any time around that time. You can go to 10 years if that's easier for you. And my question for you now is, are you the same person now as you were then? Or has there been change? Has there been change in your body? Has there been change in your heart and your mind? Do you feel like you're the same person now as you were back then? Go back to a year ago. A year ago, we were still in lockdown in Ireland, coming out of this quite a severe one. You might remember back to maybe that time feels frozen to you, or you're still in it, but can you go back a year? Are you the same person now as you were a year ago? Or has there been change? Obviously, there'll be continuity, but are you the same person? Are you the same person now as you were a week ago? Last week when you were on this course, for example? Or has there been change? Have things shaped and influenced your life and changed your mind and your heart and your body since then? And with reflection, you're just trying to feel for your intuitive response, really, although thinking can help too. So think back to the person you were last night as you were in bed before you fell asleep. Are you the same person now as you were last night? Are you the same person? Would you mind if that person, if you were replaced by that person, or do you feel like you've moved on from them? Are you the same person now as you were an hour and a half ago when you came to this course? Or have things unfolded further? Has life rolled on a bit further? Are you in the same states of mind? And looking at your experience now, what can you pin down that's definitely you, that will continue unchanged through time? It's not that there won't be continuity. It's not that you won't remember how you were. But is there anything in you that doesn't flow and evolve and change? And there's no reason to fear that flow and that evolution and that change. And when you're ready, we can bring the practice to a close. Okay, and feel free to comment in the chat if you want. Sorry, there was a little shorter than I'd like it to be, but it's an interesting reflection, so you can write anything you want in the chat. So I guess what that reflection is trying to get at, and feel free to keep writing if you want. Very interesting. So what that practice is trying to get at, and it's not trying to make you depressed or morbid or anything like that, but what it's trying to get at is that every day there is a new you that arises in dependence upon the conditions that you find yourself in. Yeah, every day we create our world and in dependence upon the conditions. And a huge part of those conditions are the you that you were before, obviously. You know, it would be foolish to deny that there isn't continuity. But not just every day, every moment, actually. Every moment we kind of arise anew and we pass away anew. Yeah. And so we tend to, this tends to freak us out a bit in life. And the Buddha is saying that what we tend to try and do then is ascribe a permanent self that's kind of above and beyond this, keeping it all together. But the Buddha is saying that if you can just let go into that flow and just see how in every moment you're arising and passing away, that doesn't have to be a problem. And actually, it's really beautiful. It's really creative and it's really, really positive. In a way, when we try and create a fixed self, we narrow down what we can become and we narrow down our range of experience of what we can do and be and have. So if we can open, Buddhist practice really is about opening more and more and more to the ever arising and ever passing away of one's experience. Yeah. And just to come back to some of the points there, one of the things that will never change was my heart. I know what you mean, and that I think how I'd interpret that is that I don't think consciousness can be destroyed, you know. And I'd probably in response to Carol's one, I don't, from a Buddhist perspective, death isn't the end, it just keeps rolling on, you know. And after death there's a whole process. Now you don't have to believe that, it's up to you, you can read about it again. I don't have time to go into it tonight, but even one's mind, one's heart is being changed over time as well, you know. And that's good because we can then become more and more and more compassionate, or if you want to put it a different way, we can uncover our deepest potential more and more and more, to let it you know, in our deepest potential, the human heart is deeply loving and wise, but we have to kind of uncover it, you could say. That's the Buddhist vision. Anyway, so much of life is about letting go and opening to things. Okay, so I have to come back then to the wheel, and I'm probably running out of time now. So I want to just look at the wheel, and so in a way, the outer rim of the wheel describes how we don't do this. Yeah, and but it describes how a particular kind of mind arises when we're not creative, and next week we look at the spiral, which is the type of mind that arises in dependence on conditions when we are creative. So this week we're still looking at the reactive mind, you could say. So just going around the outer parts of the wheel. So it starts. Oscar, can you see the mouse? Just give me a thumbs up. Yeah. So it starts here. The picture's a bit grainy, but it starts here with ignorance or delusion. And out of delusion come our habits. I'm just going to go through this in the traditional way first, and then I'll come back and explain it in a simplified way then secondly. Out of our delusion and our unknowing and our ignorance arises our habits. You know, we fall back on our habits, you could say. We think that our habits will help us. And out of that comes consciousness, which is a monkey jumping from tree to tree, a certain type of consciousness. And out of that comes the full psychophysical organism is how it's put, but basically our mind and our body. And out of that then comes our sense organs, you know, touch, smell, taste, and so on. And then out of that we contact the world. So the image here in this one is of a man and a woman kissing. So you know, sense experience, basically. Your senses that have arisen meeting the world. And then out of that comes excuse me, pleasure and pain. And here is just depicted pain, probably for its impact. And then out of that comes grasping. So really getting attached and fixated on getting what you want. Then out of that becomes becoming. I'm just going to, for simplicity, merge these two, becoming, and particularly by a pregnant woman. And then out of that comes birth. So we become a new type of person. And out of that then comes death. Yeah. So where there's birth, there is death. So there's a whole 6-week course in this on its own. I'm just going to really simplify it now and show you a slightly more simplified version of it. So I'll get back to your comment in a second. So the simplified version is, oh, there it is, that we have delusion. Yeah, that we have delusion. And out of our delusion, a certain type of body and mind arises. Now, remember, I'm just talking about the reactive mind here. Next week, we'll be looking at the creative mind. So it's a certain type of experience arises. So, you decide to stay up watching Netflix till 3 a.m. and then the next day you have a certain type of body and mind experience. Your delusion is that you think that staying up till 3 a.m. watching Netflix will make you happy, for example. And then we inhabit a certain world. So the kind of body and mind, particularly our mind that we have, then meets the world. So you meet that annoyingly chirpy person at work, or you go to the newspaper and read the news, or you go out outside your door and it's raining or it's sunny. And so your whole experience creates a certain type of world, a world where, for example, Vajrashura is long-winded or Vajrashura is profound, depending on the kind of mind in particular you bring to the situation. And then we experience this world as pleasant, painful, or neutral. Yeah, we can experience this world as pleasant, painful, or neutral. You might walk out the door and you experience rain, and you experience that as unpleasant. Or maybe you walk out the door and you feel the sun on your skin and it feels pleasant. And I remember, just on this note, I remember one time cycling into college. I learned to meditate when I was in college, and cycling into Trinity and thinking to myself, God, it's a beautiful day, isn't it, on the bike? It's really lovely. How beautiful is this? And then I realized it was lashing rain and I was in the middle of traffic. And I had all my overalls on and I was slightly sweaty, as they are, when you have your waterproofs on. And it really struck me, it's your mind. It's your mind. So it was actually a really beautiful day, actually. It was a really pleasant experience. That's what it was, a really pleasant experience, rather than a painful one. Anyways, that's maybe a sidetrack because probably that's more the creative mind. But anyways, so depending upon the body and the mind and the world that we contact, we experience things as pleasant, painful, or neutral. Yeah. And particularly when things are pleasant, we crave more pleasure. Yeah, we want more of it. Yeah. So, or when things are painful, we want to get away from the pain. Pleasure and craving and aversion are just kind of two sides of the same thing, really. They're just the opposites of each other. And I'm going to simplify this further in a minute. And then when we start to crave more pleasure, we think, it would be really nice to have a really nice cold drink right now, and then we get really graspy. We start getting attached to it, having that thing or having more of that thing if we have it. So craving is where you start to orientate towards it, and grasping and attachment is where you're actively holding on to it. Yeah. And then as a result, you become a new type of person. So when you exist in states of craving, you become a person colored by craving. So this touches back into the 6 realms that we already touched into. You become a person characterized, no worries, Kalina, you become a person characterized by, and you'll see the world in a certain kind of way. And then that gives rise to further delusion in the future. So you can become a person slightly more dominated by the reactive mind. And then that gives rise to other things down the line again. And I'll say one more slide then, and I'll stop for questions. So the gap then, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to put a break in that. We're trying to get away from this boom, 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 boom that leads us to unhappiness, basically, because craving, grasping, and attachment are actually unpleasant. They're unpleasant states to be in. If you've ever experienced intense craving for something, you'll know that if you can step back from it, it's actually unpleasant. Yeah. So the gap then, so we start off, this is really simplified now. So we have feeling tone. So you might remember, this is a slightly technical term, but you might remember in the body scan earlier, we had contact. So we felt the feet in contact with the floor. So that was where your body and mind was meeting the world outside through your senses. And maybe you noticed that it was quite pleasant, or it was quite painful, or maybe you noticed your hands were pleasant. Maybe your shoulders were a bit unpleasant or painful. So everything, all the things we experience in the world, the Buddha said, will have a feeling tone with them. They'll be pleasant or painful or somewhere in between, neutral. And when we experience pleasant things, we crave for more, or we want something, or the opposite is aversion if it's painful. And then we get into grasping, and then we get into becoming. Yeah. So where might the gap be here? Where might we be able to stop this process? Answers in the chat, please, or on a postcard, but in the chat's probably better. Where might you, and if you notice already from being in a Buddhist class, don't give it away. So where might the gap be that we can put in? Where might we be able to stop this from happening? Maybe in the meditation earlier, you noticed how you could get into stories about what was going on in your body, or you could not. Yeah, so where might we be able to stop this chain of events happening? This is a chain. The 12 links are a chain that we try to break, because it's just going round and round and round. We move from, we recreate ourselves in a certain kind of way based upon craving, and then grasping and becoming, and then we set up a habit for more of it next time. Okay, so observing the feeling, self-awareness, yeah, at the feeling tone, awareness of craving to neutralize it, yeah, letting our feelings be. Yeah, so I think you're all kind of getting at the same thing there, pausing and before reacting, yeah. So the gap traditionally is put in here. So what we're trying to do is just really feel things without getting lost in stories about them, yeah. And Sangharakshita, who's the founder of our Buddhist community, calls this the battleground of the spiritual life. Being able to try and stay with people, things, the world, internal mental states, everything we experience being pleasant or painful or somewhat neutral, and not getting into craving or aversion, but staying with them until they deepen into something more creative. And what they deepen into, this process of creativity, is called the spiral. And we'll be looking at that next week. But for now, what we're trying to do is feel things deeply, feel our body, have the contact with the world, our emotional contact with the world, with our with people, with even ideas. We have contact with ideas. And if everything we have contact with will be pleasant or painful or somewhat neutral, but not getting into, oh, I really want more of that, or I really don't like that. And we're just trying to stay with things. Yeah. That doesn't mean you don't take creative action in response to things, but you're trying not to get lost in stories and then get into grasping or attachment, and then becoming a person more marked by craving and grasping and attachment. So I hope that's a little clear anyway. So yeah, that's the gap. Yeah. And you can read a bit more about that there's not that much more about it in the book, but there is in the seminar extracts, if you want to read more in the seminar extracts at the back of the book this week. If we can stay in the gap, the spiral then opens up, and we'll look at this next week. Now, just to say something, who said it there? Observing the feeling. Someone said noticing craving, I thought. And I think for me, oh yeah, sorry, Eileen said awareness of the craving to neutralize it. For me, this is very idealistic in some ways. And I often think that actually for me, I usually overshoot the gap and then have to come back to it. It's often only when I'm in craving that I notice that I've not stayed with feeling tone. Yeah. And so your homework this week in a way is to try and stay with things as they unfold. And actually, the thing is, if you can have this self-awareness and just being with things without getting lost in editorializing about them, painful states of mind tend to dissolve more quickly, and pleasant states of mind tend to deepen into more pleasure. Yeah, and that more pleasure we'll look at again next week. The spiral is a path of increasing pleasure and creativity that we can get onto if we just don't go straight into craving and give into our craving straight away. Okay, I've probably said enough. So let's look at the home practice this week, and then we'll go into groups for about 12 minutes. So the home practice this week, you could reread to page 25. You might have read it a few times. Excuse me. But what I'd like you to do is start reading the seminar extracts at the back of the book. So these are extracts taken from study seminars. And maybe read one or two of those this week and really have a look at them. They're very interesting. Meditate every day. Try and stay in the gap between your actual experience of the breath or of metta and not getting into distractions about them if you've already learned to meditate. And then notice the gap between feeling and craving. Notice the gap between feeling and craving in your day. And if you find you've overshot, come back to the gap, or come back to staying with the feeling tone. And maybe one of the things we need to do this week is maybe you just need to think about how you're going to remember to do that. So maybe you want to write something down, like a post-it on your mirror or something like that, or a reminder on your phone to do that a few times a day. Yeah. And you can do that in meditation or just outside meditation as well. Okay, I hope that's all clear. Why don't we go into groups? There's a lot of information there, but you can read the book again to catch up on it. And hopefully the group leaders will be able to clarify with you if anything is unclear. Feeling tone is a Buddhist term. Yeah, the word is Vedana. Sometimes it's feelings, but I think feeling tone is clear. So I think actually, Oscar, it might only be 10 minutes if that's okay. Okay, guys. So I hope I didn't overload you with information there. The main thing is, that's fine, John. We're going to finish now anyway. So the main thing is watch the gap between when you experience things and notice the feeling tone and jumping into craving or aversion. Yeah. So we'll see you next week. And I'll email you also Carol's images and a few other things that we talked about tonight. And we'll see you next week when we're looking at the spiral. And yeah, we'll look at the creative mind unfolding in conditionality. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to stay on and or type them in the chat. And we'll leave it there otherwise, and we'll see you next week. So feel free to unmute yourself and say goodnight if you want.